So, like, he was 5 when he passed away, yeah?
Yeah, he was 5.
And how old were you and Luke again? Sorry.
So I was 7, he was 9, Luke was 9.
Okay. And how did he pass, if you don't mind?
I've romanticized the story in my head because it is quite a sad story. But long story short, he got hit by a bus. Yeah, he got hit by a bus, and it was on Boxing Day. So on his present, he was riding his bike across the road, and then around a blind spot, and a bus came and hit him. And I know that affected me and Luke in different ways. I know
it affected me, man.
Yeah, it was
just hearing about it.
Yeah, that moment. But Luke and I were both there, like when it happened, and both played like. It was so good that we were there, like, you know, in hindsight. Because, yeah, man, like, what a foundation to build. Like, I know that this sounds so selfish, man, but when these kinds of things happen, and when 2 deaths, like I was thinking about this last night, when my 2 brothers had passed away, there's no other way for me to be, man. Like, I can only then go internal. I can only be selfish at these moments. When death, I've kind of had similar conversations with other mates, other people, and their responses are so varied, man. Like, it was because certain people have never been to a funeral, certain people have never even like experienced death, like, you know, couldn't even fathom the idea of their family members dying, whatever. But because this has happened twice for me in my life, I'm like not surprised as much, you know, especially when Luke died. I'd had 30 odd years to prepare for, you know, like 20 odd years to prepare for this whole scenario. I had been living for like I'd never.
You addressed it early.
Exactly.
I addressed it early, yeah?
100%. And full prep for it. I'd never walked away from a conversation with Luke thinking, I regret that. Like, I wish I didn't say that. So when that happened, my last interaction with Luke, man, I wish, again, like, it was just simple things. I wish that I had just grabbed him. I wish that I'd hugged and kissed him. I wish I told him I loved him. But I didn't.
It was meant to, you know?
Exactly. All of these things just happen. Anything that happens is supposed to happen. That's kind of like, you know, what I got out of it.
Yeah, don't overlook what you did have.
100%. Exactly. So, but I know that Ronnie's death affected us differently. Luke, at the time Luke stayed back, I was already on my way back to the house. I don't know why. I was already on my way back to the house. So I found myself in the position of the messenger. I have to tell everyone, Luke's going to try to revive this guy. And I'm on my way, like a 7-year-old kid having to tell, you know, like a group of adults. Yeah, like it. And it was that experience. So, yeah, it's so funny because like up until I was maybe a teen, I mean, maybe even in my 20s, Ronnie's situation had been so personal and only my experience. You know, Luke and I never really spoke about or exchanged stories. Like, we never did this until we were.
It would have been so painful.
Yeah, and kind of like
bring it back up and open up the wounds.
And it was more like, I know you're dealing with something. You know that I'm dealing with something. Let's just, you know, have this mutual respect for one another, mutual consideration.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't need to know the details or anything like that. Yeah, fast forward 20 years, you know, when we started discussing this, man, our experiences were like 2 completely different, like, just time periods. Like, they were 2 completely different stories. And I know that actually, that Luke carried that with him to his grave, this whole thing, because he felt like his role in that situation was to revive him, to bring him back to life. It was so weird that
That's heavy, yeah.
I know, man. I know. And I had the easy job, you know, and even at the time, like I said, how we didn't exchange stories, and my story was personal to me until I was 20. Even then, I understood that, like, okay, I wasn't there. I didn't have to see him, you know, I didn't have to see him lying on the ground, whatever. I didn't have to see his body, you know, but Luke, like, man, he carried this. He was like, he even got to a point where he was telling me that he felt like he killed him. He was like, I killed, you know, him. I tried to help him out and all this stuff. I'm like, man, this is so weird. And this is us, like, being full adults, you know, and him kind of.
He definitely didn't.
No, he 100% didn't. You know, this is undoubtedly, he had nothing to do with, like, man, you've got this, like, bus that's crushed a 5-year-old body, you know, at 9 years old, you're not really, understanding all of this. And it is, like I said, you go so internal at these panic moments. So he carried that for ages. And even up until the day that he died, he would jokingly bring this up, and I was joking. But he'll jokingly bring it up, and I'm like, man, I've had it. Like, I don't want to hear that joke anymore. It's old, it's age. And I know that the more you repeat it, the more it's becoming like this actual thing that you've done, and you're gonna fester on that energy. And it's not the thing, let it go, type thing. But anyways, both of us were affected like two completely different ways from that experience.
It's traumatic from a very young age.
100%, man. 100%. It was massive.
I always think there's always the positive and negative. So that was the negative. I think the positive from that is it actually did help you address a very serious situation at a young age.
Yeah.
That set you up, I think, later on to cope with these very harsh issues.
Yeah.
Because even adults in these, like you said, you probably haven't experienced that degree of loss yet. But it's inevitable. Everyone is going to feel some loss at some time.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a positive. Like for myself, like I've addressed death as well, and I think I've never felt more alive once I had addressed it.
Man, yeah,
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So it's always a positive in there,
That is. It's like actually, like they say, there's an old saying that says, if the mountain was smooth, you couldn't climb it. Like, we need these rigid edges, you need these sharp corners and all this stuff in order to climb this mountain that they call life, whatever. And through these kinds of moments, like, I had, that was replaying in my head exactly what you said. Through death, you appreciate life so much more. I feel so alive, man. Like, I'm not there. And that thought happened both times. Like, at both my brother's funerals, looking at their bodies and their coffins, just like, man, I'm standing up, but and I'm processing this. I'm doing this right now. This is my life.